Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we're so happy to have you here with us today. Man, we've had some amazing reviews from you guys and shares on iTunes. And first of all, I want to thank those of you who have. We're going to read out Mimi's review today, Mimi Crawford. And it said, amazing podcast, ! This podcast is literally life-changing. I'm so grateful to have found it. It gives you such a wonderful perspective on life and relationships of any form, appropriate for today's conversation. It's super relatable too. Knowing that there's other people out there who have gone through such a similar situation as I have is so relieving and freeing. It's like a weight has been lifted knowing I'm not alone. Thank you both so much.
Such a beautiful review.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for leaving reviews. I know it takes a few extra seconds, but if you don't mind leaving a review on our Apple podcast.
We're everywhere now.
Yeah.
iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, which we're really excited about. Leave us reviews and ratings. Look,
it really, really helps us.
It helps get the message out. And the whole point of doing this is exactly things like this. There was a woman who just shared, I think you just saw it too on Instagram, that listening to the podcast helped her quit her marijuana addiction.
It's amazing.
Like, if you don't share for yourself and your friends, share it for whoever else might be able to do it. And iTunes and Spotify and all those, they care about the reviews and the stars. That's how they decide who's going to get rated higher and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So we need your help.
Help us out. Help other people. We would love it. We're at, I think, 400 ratings. Let's make it to 1,000 by the end of this month. With you guys' help, we can do it.
Yes.
And I'm just going to remind you, because today's topic is, there's a lot of heat in today's topic. And do me a favor, screenshot at any point in the conversation. We love those screenshots.
Something that inspires you.
Something that inspires you, something that connects, even a question.
Something that makes you think.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to see those. Just tag ignited.me, sophie.jaffe, or Dr. Adi Jaffe.
Yep.
This was a big conversation today.
Yeah.
It was, I don't think we've had anybody like Whitney where we went right into this part of coupleship.
Yeah, no, we've had a sex coach. We've had the owner or founder of a sex app.
Yep. Should we tell everybody about our the workshop in Seattle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alexandra Roxo, who we had on the podcast.
Mm-hmm, last Valentine's Day. We are right after Valentine's Day, March 1st through 3rd, going to be in Seattle to revisit Bala Yoga, our home away from home. And Friday night, I'll be doing a hit vinyasa class, and Adi will be DJing. Saturday and Sunday, I think 2 different locations in Seattle, but Bala Yoga. And This is up on their website. We'll put it in the show notes, but you can just search Bala Yoga and look on their website under their workshop section. And then purchase tickets for either Friday's Vinyasa Hit or Saturday and or Sunday's incredible workshop with Alexandra and Adi and I chatting all things relationships. It's going to be incredible, mind-blowing for your relationship. And if you're up for the adventure, fly in for it. It's so worth it. It's totally affordable for a workshop. You get to meet us in person. And honestly, we don't have anything else in the books for a couples workshop. We will have an Ignited podcast meetup at a later date, but just want to make sure you know that this doesn't come around all the time.
Nope.
And we would love to meet you in the flesh. So make sure you sign up. We are already selling tickets.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be amazing. Alexandra is going to bring the heat. It's going to be pretty incredible.
Yeah. And this conversation, this is a very inspiring conversation. It definitely makes you think and question what you qualify as a relationship in the traditional sense. No matter what you're in now, I think it hopefully kind of just scratches at the door of, okay, like what's behind that door? And not that there's one way that fits everything. And if anything, it's the opposite. We have talked about this at length. Adi and I personally, when we first started dating, we talked about the fact that every relationship is unique. Every relationship is different. And that's the beauty, is that you can have your own relationship that you make up the rules to. You can edit it as you please. You can rip pages out. You can glue in pages, whatever you want to do for the storybook of your life with your partner. That can look like a lot of different things. And this is one shade. This is one chapter that might vary from another. It doesn't mean that they're less in love. It doesn't mean that they have issues or problems. It doesn't mean that they don't love each other. Or
Well, I think we can be a little bit more specific because it's people haven't heard the story yet. Like Whitney, who we talked to, and her partner Aubrey have been together for 7 years with a little break in the middle. And for the last little while, for the last few years, it's been an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship. And as Sophie just pointed out, that is one part of the spectrum of what relationships can look like. But for me, what I like about this conversation is I think for a lot of people, it's going to push so hard on the envelope that it's going to make other things that maybe seemed out of the norm otherwise fall closer to maybe the stereotypical relationship that you've thought of. Because if there can be people who have very successful, happy relationships and are pushing the boundaries that much from what we accept as the norm, I mean, let's be honest about it. The norm of what, and by that I mean what everybody's expectations are of what your relationship will look like, is pretty narrow.
yeah,
There's not a lot of flexibility in a typical, let's say, at least heterosexual relationship in this country.
yeah,
And
definitely. I think it's you know, it's the romance, it's the Disney Channel, it's the Disney movies, it's the princess, the all of that bullshit. It's like it's completely brainwashed us as a society, and that's even given this conversation that we have. If at the end of it you have no curiosity at all, and it's just like, okay, cool, I listened to this awesome conversation, I know for sure that's not a good fit for me and my partner. Great,
all the more power to you.
By all means. But I think the point here is that there's lots of different shades and lots of different versions of what a relationship looks like, a healthy relationship. And they are a living example of a healthy relationship that bends the rules, the typical rules a little bit, and makes up their own. And it's serving them at this point. That's not to say that once they get married and have kids, things won't shift.
Sure.
That's not to say that in 10
Well,
years.
as priorities shift, as life changes, you can expect things to be different.
Yeah. And
I mean,
also just that as you change and grow, like there's certain things within you and your relationship and your experiences that shape the direction and affect the direction that the winds take you in. And that's their own experience. And who knows, like in 10 years from now, it might not serve them anymore in this way.
Yeah. You know, for me, this gets to a much broader conversation, as you talked about before, you know, which is, we've talked about this many, many times. And when you and I started to have this conversation publicly about relationships, like for Ignited Recovery, my goal is to help 1 million people beat their addiction. Within Ignited Relationships, our goal is to literally reduce the rate of divorce, right? And to me, there are two ways to do that. You can either get less people who are not a good fit to get married because they realize that, oh, actually, this isn't a good fit, we shouldn't get married, or help more people maintain the relationship. And I'm going to use divorce like in the grand sense of things, right? People breaking up their relationships.
Separating.
Give people tools, conversation openers, ideas about how to move forward past difficult moments in the relationship so they don't have to break up.
Yep.
To me, this actually fits both of those in some way, right? One of the things that was smart about the story of Whitney and Aubrey is initially when this difficult conversation about, hey, I'm thinking of opening up the relationship, came up, it broke them up. Mm-hmm. Because Whitney said, hell no. It's important, as we talk about so many times, to be honest with your partner, right?
And most importantly, honest with yourself. If something is triggering to you and you're like, I don't feel comfortable with that, and you go along with it anyway, that's not okay either.
Yeah.
And I've done that before. Like we've been in situations where I pushed it like, oh, I do trust you again. Or yeah, everything's good. And I push it and I push timing and I didn't let myself heal enough.
Yep.
There are lots of examples I can think of like this. And instead of listening to my gut instinct, I pushed on trying to please you or.
Well, I mean, we would, when we were with Mark, I think there were 3 different times that I remember sitting in a therapy session and you saying, oh, no, I 100% trust you. And when that would happen, part of what we would try to do was get back to normal, right? Because we had put all these limitations on our relationship. And so we would push the envelope a little bit saying, okay, you trust me enough given where we are right now. Let's get a little bit closer to the way things used to be. And whether that was going out with friends and grabbing drinks back then, or going back to teaching, which was a real problem for a while, like in all these areas, not in all these areas, but in many of them, you thought, yeah, I trust you. And then when the boundary got pushed, there was a reactivity.
Absolutely.
But we got to at least express that and then say, oh, okay, well, let's back up a little bit.
I think it's just it's important to experience these things and not to hide. Like it's both ends of the spectrum. Like, no, you don't want to suppress a feeling and push through it. But in the same light, you need to push the boundaries a little bit and explore different edges of your growth and of your potential in order to live your best relationship, just like you push the edges of the envelope of you personally in your own life.
Yeah, and if you don't, like if you're sitting listening to this right now and saying, actually, I have no desire to push the envelope, that is also 100% okay.
Yeah.
Just make sure your partner knows that and you're not, as you just said, Soph, kind of allowing the boundaries to be pushed, even though you really don't want them to be, because you just decided to go along for the ride.
Yeah, I think it's important to the most important thing is to communicate the whole way through and be honest and speak up for yourself and your feelings. And you'll hear more of all of this on this podcast. I'm so excited for you all to hear this.
Yeah, this is, again, I can't, if this is not one of those conversations that makes you guys screenshot and send us comments and whatnot, I don't know what is, because we go everywhere in this one. So thank you, Whitney, for showing up and telling your truth. Thank you for all for listening. As you know, we'll be back after this little break. See you on the flip side.
Enjoy.
Hey, everybody. We just wanted to interrupt this episode for a split second to let you know about a really exciting in-person workshop and a whole set of events we're doing in Seattle.
We can't wait to meet you. It is March 1st through 3rd. We have 3 different opportunities for you to come hang out with us. Yoga and HIIT on Friday. Couples with our dear friend Alexandra Roxo on Saturday and Sunday. So check out Bala Yoga's website or click in the show notes.
Yep, there'll be a link below. Can't wait to see you in person. We don't have another thing like this planned for months, so come join us.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation section of today's podcast. As you know, Sophie and I talk a lot in our going deep episodes about our relationship and the relatively, what would you call it? Non-traditional / unique version that we've put together here over the last 10 years or so. And I think today's guest is going to help us push that conversation forward. I'm really excited about it. We've got Whitney Miller on here today. Whitney, what's your handle so everybody knows it as they screenshot this on Instagram?
Hey, it's Wit in Love.
Wit in Love. And we're going to talk a lot about love today. So, I got to know you actually through Aubrey's Instagram, and he'll probably come into this conversation pretty quickly here. But then I started following and seeing that you're being pretty outspoken about a lot of the topics that Sophie and I have become outspoken about. And I thought it'd be an amazing fit to have you on and have a really direct, open conversation in a way that maybe scares some people, but then we feed on it. And so I thought it'd be really, really cool. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, I'm super happy to be with you guys this afternoon, and deep, open conversations are my favorite. So we should have a good time. I'm Whitney Miller. I live in Austin, and I've been on this journey of creating, like you said, a unique relationship, which I feel like everybody's relationship should be unique. As an open relationship with my fiance, Aubrey Marcus, for the past 5 years. And from that, I went into coaching couples and individuals on how to create their most optimal relationship for them specifically, not for anybody else, but for them and what works for them.
I love it.
Yeah, that's key.
We talk about that a lot with couples.
And even on our own journey, just in the very beginning, just being like, it's not what it looks like to anyone else. No two people have been in this relationship exactly like us at this moment. So how can I respect you and us and myself enough to just think outside the box and create what works for us? That's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and everybody comes with their own backgrounds and somehow expects, it's actually, if you really think about it deeply, it's everybody expects the kind of like, depending on your generation, the Top Gun or Beauty and the Beast or whatever, like, Dirty Dancing or whatever movie you kind of created in your head. Well, that's what love looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then they expect pretty much the exact same thing to happen in their own life. And one of the facets of that we will definitely talk about is that concept of this singular monogamy in the relationship, which has just become the standard, right? That's just expected to be true throughout your relationship for all of times and always. And if that gets broken at all, the only thing that people are told is, well, you have to leave and you have to start from scratch with somebody new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And talk about some pressure. My God, like we're born into this world and we're handed one relationship and it's one size fits all. And you have to live up to that relationship, even if you don't want it, know, and no one's really out there talking about this too much. I think the conversation is becoming broader and more talked about today than ever before. So that's exciting. And the thing is, when you go into this one size fits all relationship, you come to find out if it doesn't work or if something is off or there is infidelity or you just don't feel like having sex anymore with the same person after 10 years. You get disappointed and then you feel like you're doing something wrong when really you just need to kind of adapt to the situation instead of holding these strong boundaries of what it should be or how it should look.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you bring up, I'll call them alternative ways of looking at relationships, even though the funny thing is, we've now worked with so many couples, and I know you do work with couples, you find out that the norm is actually abnormal. That's what you end up really finding out.
Mm-hmm. And that there really is no norm because everybody is creating their own relationship already.
Yeah. It's just that they've been doing it behind closed doors, right? They've been doing it in hiding because the message has been, oh, you don't have the relationship everybody is expected to have. I'll just describe it. It's like you wake up in the morning full of energy, give your partner a hug, maybe have sex in the bathroom, like over the sink because, you're doing it all the time.
your kids are smiling, you feed them some breakfast, sending off to school, kiss your partner on the cheek, go to work smiling the entire time, go back, dinner is magically prepared even though you both have been working all day. You have sex 3 times, each one lasting like 45 minutes. There's like tantra thrown in there.
Multiple orgasms, constant.
For everybody.
Yeah.
You get a chance, like there's music playing in the background every time you start having sex. And
Maybe
then
like smoke machines.
I love smoke machines. They're great. We use them all the time. And then eventually night takes over. You get the best, most restful sleep of your life. You wake up the next day excited and you do it all over again. And that continues until magically one day you die with no pain and everything is happy. Like that's the image that we're all trying to live up to, but nobody's been living up to it. And behind closed doors, they've been struggling. They've been fighting, or as you mentioned, they've been not finding themselves as attracted to their partner as they had before, or there was infidelity, or even the threat of infidelity, right? Like romantic entanglements at work or through friends. And the only solution most people have found, I feel like for decades now, has been hide it and either figure out a way somehow to ignore it or fix it in your relationship, or break up and divorce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what we try to hide, what we suppress is the thing that we most focus on. It becomes our master because we don't want to look at it. We don't want to focus on it. We're going to pretend like it's not there when it's going to be right in front of your face every waking moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I do a lot of work with people on addiction. And I tell people the same thing. It's like when somebody wants to quit drinking, if all they're sitting there all day is going, I'm not going to drink today. I woke up, I'm not going to drink. I don't need to drink. I'm going to go to work and I don't need to drink. My wife is getting on my nerves. I'm not going to drink though. My boss is pissing me off. And if that's the conversation in their head all day, all they're doing all day is thinking about drinking.
Yep.
And I tell them, stop thinking about the fucking drinking. Start thinking about what do you want to put in your life instead of it. Mm-hmm. And you'll find a completely different solution, because withdrawing, as you just pointed out, kind of like ignoring or blocking the thing you want to not engage in, gives it more power. It actually empowers that pain instead of allowing you to grow past it. And so that's a really, really great message, even within relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know a lot about your story. Why don't you share with me and our listeners kind of what brought you to this place? Because our listeners know our story, and we have a lot of, deceit and pain and cheating and manipulation and betrayal, and then all the beauty of all the work we've done over the last 10 years to get to the point that we're in now, which is a really incredible place. And I'm so grateful for all the pain, because we wouldn't be as close and intimate and happy and, without all of that. We wouldn't have done all the work, and we wouldn't be as connected and open-minded. I can promise you I wouldn't be as open-minded if all those things didn't happen. So why don't you share a little bit?
Yeah, no, I completely agree and feel that for sure. So I've been in a relationship now with Aubrey Marcus for 7 years. We were 2 years monogamous, and then 5 years open, unconventional, and more so poly now than anything else. But growing up, I always had boyfriends, and the issue was I would wake up and I would look over and I would be bored, and I felt like there was something wrong with me when really there was not. I didn't feel like there was anything wrong in the relationship. I just felt bored. So then I would cheat, and I cheated on all of my boyfriends basically. And, I feel like there's a big stigma and a lot of shame around infidelity and cheating, but a lot of people do it. And it's something that I did. And so I got into this relationship with Aubrey. We were monogamous for 2 years. Like I said, I cheated on my boyfriend with Aubrey. And during that time, that 2-year monogamous relationship, we had read Sex at Dawn. We had a friend of ours who was kind of in this unconventional community. So we kind of talked to him a little bit. So we would talk about what a unique situation would look like on an intellectual level and a philosophical level without the pressure of actually doing anything, which I think is a pretty good step for people who are looking to open up a relationship or transition into something unconventional. Is talk about it, read about it, listen to podcasts, be able to explore that conversation with your partner without the pressure of, okay, this is our goal, and so that's what we did for a while. And it was kind of, what would you do here? And how would this feel? And what do you think about this? And then he decided that he wanted to be in an open relationship and explore that. And I was like, oh, hell no, I am not going down that road, because I could understand it logically to a certain extent, but I was always jealous. I was always the very like alpha one in my relationship, in my past relationships. I was the girl going through the text messages and trying to figure out all of these crazy stories that I would create in my mind. But so he brought that idea to me, and I said, nope.
I love the dichotomy of you found yourself being the one who cheated because you were bored, but also the one who was jealous at not getting what you wanted. And so now, in a weird kind of, maybe an unexpected way, I'll just say it that way, in an unexpected way, having this conversation and opening up and exploring what that meant might be a way to, in some way, resolve both of those things together. Because if the expectations are different from both you and your partner, then you're not caught in a place where you have to cheat, right? It's that thing of like not telling yourself you're not going to drink all day. You're like, I can do whatever I want. So now you can be a lot more selective about it versus just running away from Aubrey or your partner into somebody else's arms because you don't know how to deal with the discomfort that happens there.
Right. And I was cheating and I was jealous and I had all of these issues, you would say, in relationships because I had my own self-worth, self-love issues with myself that I wasn't completely healing or looking at whatsoever. And that's this whole journey of being in an open relationship has really helped me transcend and bring a lot of those insecurities and past traumas into light. So I become a better person, lover, friend, girlfriend, fiance, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that has been one of the coolest parts of being in an open relationship. But when people say, oh, I could never be in an open relationship or an unconventional relationship, I'm too jealous. I was that person. I was that crazy, jealous girlfriend that you'd like see in movies. And now I'm in this place to where, like y'all said, you guys are in a beautiful, deep, very connective place. And after 7 years together, Aubrey and I are in that same place, but it took a lot to get there and a lot of pain and a lot of trauma and a lot of trial and error.
So I think we both want to dig into that a little bit more because, again, we know our story and our listeners know our story, but I think what is great about these examples is let's take away the mask of what you think this looks like so that you understand, because like we're not in an open relationship, but we talked about it in a previous episode. I call the title we learned from somebody was like monogamish. We're in a monogamish relationship, which I love as a title because like for us, let's say we definitely were very clear a long time ago. I feel like that both of us are in the room whenever anything happens and both of us have to like be okay with whatever happens and we check in with each other. It's like there's something about this pairing and then we can explore whatever we want past that point, but it's about starting there, right? And that's what works for us. And it took a while to get there actually because nobody tells you there are different options. They just don't. So sometimes we would overstep the boundaries and the next day it would feel like shit. The other person would go, that was fucked up. I hated that experience. And I was like, oh, that's, one of us would respond. And
because it's a journey.
A, it's a journey. B, the knowledge that you can come back the next day and go, I didn't want that. I didn't like the thing that happened.
But you can't know it if you don't experience it.
Yeah. And
you can't just philosophize it. You have to really be in it, be open enough to make mistakes, be flexible enough that there's no right answer and know that your partner is going to be on the other side.
Ooh, but that's so big just to say know that there's no right answer. Like there are people listening this second, because I think this is only the second time we mentioned monogamish for you and I, Soph, but like there are people who are listening this second and are like, oh, fuck that. That's messed up. I can't touch that.
Judgment.
And the judgment
Fear.
comes from the idea that there is a right way to do it. Like this is what relationships are supposed to look like. That isn't it. And I'm going to step back. And then there's the fear, as you just mentioned, Soph, about it's going to lead down a terrible path, and they're going to overstep bounds, and somebody's going to get hurt. And by the way, all those things are probably also true, right? There are going to be mistakes, and you're going to dip your toe in, and your partner's going to go, hell no, that's not, that's not going to happen. I don't feel comfortable with it. The joy of the relationship that Sophie and I have now is the respect we have for each other and the knowledge. And I think, Sophie, you can tell me if I'm right on this or not, but like, Sophie trusts that I wouldn't ever do anything purposefully to lie to her, or to try to circumvent her trust in me, or to do something behind her back without her knowing fully what's happening in the world. And I feel the same about Sophie.
I think for us too, we had to go through so much trauma, unfortunately or fortunately. That's our story, and that's what brought us to where we are now. But we went through a lot of deep trauma. We got hit over the head hard. It was all within a 1.5 year period. It was intense. I was pregnant. We were just recently married. Like, it was so big, which is kind of how a D and I go. We go hard no matter what it is. Like, lessons have to hit us over the head so hard, but that's how we learn. That's how we learn. Yeah. And it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how we learn, and the experience as it is in this universe on this lifetime right now for both of us. So luckily we learn the same way. And this was like a huge catastrophic, electrical current to us every time something happened. Yeah. Whether it was me cheating, when I cheated, it was on New Year's. It was right before I left to teach an international yoga retreat. It was, it's like, that's the way.
It really hit all the marks, all the checklists of a good trauma.
A good experience. Yeah. I feel like that's what we had to go through to get to a place of discovery, and to get to a place of like knowing, like, after we repaired all of those things, that's where we were like, oh, you're not going anywhere. Like, we've been as dark and deep as it gets, and you still love me, and we're actually closer for it. So now, like, let's have some fun and enjoy our lives. Let's not just live the opposite side of the spectrum. Let's be in the light and experience new experiences in a new way that neither of us have ever had in our lives to this point, and experience them together. Because wait, that actually brings us closer, which is amazing. Just as the darkness brought us closer, this light will actually bring us closer, and this love will bring us closer, even though it doesn't look the way that other people say that it looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
So my guess, I know, because did you guys break up after a couple of years?
Yeah, so we were monogamous, and then that's when he said, I want to try an open relationship, and I said, hell no. So we split, and I went traveling it was supposed to be a 1-month trip. It turned into 3 months backpacking by myself. And during that time, I met a guy who was super attractive, and we had a lot of fun together, but I was still very much so in love with Aubrey. And so that was the first time that in my mind, I was like, oh.
You saw it.
I experienced it. I said, I can still have this attraction for somebody else and have a good time with them, yet it's not taking away my love or my heart from Aubrey at all whatsoever. So then that's when the switch flipped for me. And then I came back, and he was like, I want to be with you. I still want to be with you. And that's how we embarked on this open relationship container together. And he was already seeing somebody at that time. So when we got together, it was under the conditions, okay, you will continue seeing this person who is honestly now my best friend. And I didn't have a lover for like 8 months. So it was really challenging to like try to go through all of those emotions and all of the stress and the situations. And we were brand new to it. We didn't have a whole lot of social proof. We didn't have anybody around us to look to for guidance. We were just figuring out along the way. And it was some of the hardest times in our relationship, but it was also like, I wanted to know, like you said, you have to try it to know. And that's why I got into it. I didn't know if I wanted to be in an open relationship. I didn't know if I could technically do it. I didn't know. But I knew that I wanted to try it. So I had the answer.
Yeah. And so, wow, I mean, stepping back into the relationship, and he's already in another relationship. So right when you came back kind of prepared to try this thing out, it was front and center. Like you couldn't ignore it. It was right there for you.
It was right in front of my face. And it was like, as soon as I got back, I went and had lunch with the woman that he was seeing. And, you know, being able to have that open communication and that open dialogue between the both of us was necessary for our relationship to thrive. And that's something that we've kept up with this entire 5-year journey together, is really keeping the open dialogue there and letting everybody know that, okay, we all want to be in the know. We all want to be extremely transparent. And we also all want to be teammates and support each other, because this isn't about hurting anybody. That's the last thing that we want to do. We want to create the most optimal, most loving situation for everybody involved, not just Aubrey and I.
And that's not going to happen unless you communicate. It can't happen unless you communicate. It can't happen unless you're so transparent, and like in all directions. Like, that makes me feel afraid. That makes me feel jealous. That makes me feel, and it's such a hard, we talk about transparency all the time. And I mean, that's one of our biggest things that have healed us personally and allowed us to be where we are now, is by this intense honesty that isn't always pretty and isn't always fun to look at. But diving into that with your partner makes you that much closer. And then if you can find people and attract people that communicate that way too, then it makes it so much more enjoyable, and you can really like create anything. Like, it's like art. You can just, the canvas is yours, and there's a lot of people, creating that art together.
Exactly. And that's also something that you will learn over time. I always had a very hard time expressing exactly what I wanted, or my desires, or my thoughts, or even saying, oh, I find this other man attractive. I had a hard time doing that at the beginning of the relationship. And honestly, probably until a couple of years ago was I able to be like, okay, I can now fully own that I like this other man, and I'm going to tell you about it.
We had this conversation all the time. I love that you bring this up. So when Sophie and I started dating, Sophie was in a very unhealthy relationship before she was with me. I'm older. I'm like 8 years older. And when we got together, I'd been through a lot more relationships, and she was in this abusive relationship. And when she was with this other guy, wearing a shirt that was too revealing, or forget for a moment, talking to another guy at a party, like any of those things were off fucking limits. You couldn't touch him because the guy would get violent and aggressive. So when Sophie and I got together, she really hated the fact sometimes that I would even be able to see that another woman was attractive, even though I'm with her, and it would cause fights. And I would look at her and I go, what do you mean? You don't see other men? Like, that guy's pretty good looking. Like, you don't see that guy as being pretty good looking? She's like, no, I just don't see him because I'm with you. And it could not fucking compute. I didn't understand it. And because I've never been in that kind of other relationship, I haven't had anybody tell me that I have to put up a block. It was a mental block that she couldn't get through. And that time we talked about where she slept with somebody on New Year's Eve, it was this fucking male model that she met. She was a little fucked up too, a lot fucked up. But I passed out, and she went up and continued partying, and then she hooked up with this guy. Like, the next day I was like, you really have to fucking sleep with this guy?
Like, all the guys here will always find something, right? Either they're just extremely good looking, and you're like, come on, that one, like, I'm like, real life Tarzan. Or
I could live in the gym, and I don't know that I would ever look like that dude.
Well, he was also like 17. He was like so young. You can't.
Yeah, and it goes the other way too. We found is like if there's someone who's fairly average and just not this beautiful male model, you're like, what? Well, why him?
Why? Right, totally. Either way, you're fucked. Either way.
Either way.
I guess literally. But the funny thing was, and this might sound crazy to some people listening right now, but the thing was that after we got over the trauma of the betrayal, and it wasn't easy, by the way. We got into fights like for weeks and maybe like a few months about that singular event. But when we got out to the other side, one of the things that happened is Sophie finally was able to see, and I saw it in her. She was like, oh, maybe I do find other people attractive. And it literally took that.
But it was 10 years, 12 years into our relationship. Like that's how much healing I needed. And it's crazy that like these traumatic events are what healed me. Like I look back at that event with him and I'm like, cool. On one hand, thank you because you gave us a bunch, but like on the other hand, what an asshole. Like he totally took advantage of me in certain ways. There's so many different like ways to look at it. But at the end, at the core of it, the lessons there and the way that it changed thank you. Thank you for that experience, because now I can actually break through this trauma that I've had since I was 15 years old, where I couldn't even recognize that a male was attractive because of the programming that my ex manipulated my brain for 5 years straight. Like, wow, finally, 15 years after that event, maybe more, I finally could heal, but it took something really catastrophic. And I could only talk to people that were super, super conscious and aware and can think outside the box. And the ones that I talked to after that happened, they were like, congratulations. And of course it happened on New Year's. And of course you're going to start this year out this way. And, bless, and it's like, whoa, you're right.
And for about 2 weeks, I was like, don't fucking say that to me. I understand I'm going to feel that way like 2 months. I'm not ready for that shit yet.
He's like, don't bring that Sophie shit in here.
Right.
Stop being optimistic right now. Let me be angry. I'm like, okay, true. Take your time.
Yeah.
That's the thing too with infidelity in relationships is, it's really challenging for sure. I get it. I've been cheated on. I've been the cheater. So I understand. But the thing is, it does have the ability to create an open, honest communication between the two partners that have never been able to communicate in that way. It almost forces you to open up in a way that you haven't. And then you can decide if that's something that you want to stay in and bring that communication style into, the progression of your relationship. Or if you decide, no, this is not working for me, then that's great too. But it gives you the ability to really use like a magnifying glass on your relationship and move forward in a healthier way.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have moved from monogamous to open to poly. And you're engaged. Mm-hmm. And so do you mind if we dig into this for a second?
No, go ahead. I'm an open book.
Cool. So first of all, I'm not 100%, like, I don't know that I would be the best person to describe poly. And since you do this now for couples that might be important, like, poly is literally about having essentially a primary relationship, but then being in additional relationships, right?
To a certain extent. Poly is it's multiple loves is really what it translates to.
Right.
So most relationships, it seems as though when you get into an unconventional relationship, a lot of people will start open, which people say is kind of like a don't ask, don't tell type of policy.
Oh,
and
wow.
then you can go into poly, which is where you have multiple loves, and the rules in the hierarchy start to relax. So you don't necessarily have a number one or a number two. Everyone can be on the same level. Whereas, with us, we do live together. We are engaged. So there is some sort of a primary partnership there. But when we first started, it was very much so we are primary, and you can't necessarily have these big emotions for everybody else. We are number one, period. And throughout the time, that's kind of relaxed, but we still have this big affinity for each other. But yeah, poly is having love for other people as well. So we have emotional connections and emotional relationships with other people outside of just Aubrey and I.
It's, it's so funny, even just this little description, like maybe it's just because of the way Sophie, you and I communicate, but it's like the idea of open as a don't ask, don't tell freaks me out more than poly. Like I think if we didn't have all the trauma of cheating, like we would be at this differently. That's the thing, is like, it's all about your story. It's all about your joint relationship. And for a D&I, because the trust was broken in such an intense way early on, it's still tender there. And although we've done a lot of healing, it's like, cool, we already lived that life. Like you already had that secret world. You already were he had another relationship with a woman for 8 months. I had no idea. We were in a very serious relationship, and he was straight up dating another woman and fucking her. Like,
no idea. I was completely oblivious. And he already had online inappropriate stuff. Like we already have done all of that. So we don't really need to do that now. That's not what's right for our relationship. That's not going to help us heal. We've been there. Like we already got what we needed, the lessons we needed. Now it's like, how can we learn more about each other? How can we experience this openness together and make it more sexy for us as a couple?
And most people, unfortunately, are in a don't ask, don't tell situation without knowing they're in a don't ask, don't tell.
Right, totally. That's a good point.
So now we have language surrounding unconventional relationships. Consensual non-monogamy is what it's called. This is us entering into a relationship to we are not monogamous, but it's consensual.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times relationships don't consent to each other. It just kind of happens behind the scenes because there isn't the practice, there isn't the picture of somebody else doing this or the reference of somebody else doing this. They don't
there's no languaging. Yeah. There's no communication about it. There's nothing to look up to. There's nothing, there's no like open relationship on a Disney movie. Like it.
No, it's becoming more, it is becoming a bigger conversation. You are seeing it in a few different movies and a few different shows. And so it is kind of like coming into the mass media and opening people's world a bit, but it's still very, very hidden, still very taboo. I mean, you go on either one of our Instagrams and we post something, me and Aubrey are very happy, but we've been in a 5-year open relationship and it's like incredible amounts of hate with incredible amounts of love because this is a topic of conversation that triggers the hell out of people or it fascinates people.
All their fears, it feeds into all their fears, right? And by the way, for both of you, because, he's the CEO of like an exercise company and like the strong male type, and probably guys are going like, wait, why are you letting, literally the languaging is probably in their head, something like, how are you allowing this to happen, right? Like, how are you letting your partner do this? Because that emasculates him in some ways. Whereas for you, I forgot the name of but you've won like beauty pageants.
United States.
Yeah, Miss United States. Like, I'm assuming the standard for women who have followed you from that standard, they're like, what do you mean? Like, how do you not guard your man to only be able to be with you? Like, you're supposed to own him. And that scares the shit out of people because as two pretty obvious examples of strong icons of what we know it's supposed to look like, to turn around and go, oh yeah, that's not our relationship at all.
Right.
Makes people start, well, if they're not doing it, then how the fuck am I supposed to hold on to that ideal?
Yeah. And, if people go to, oh, well, there's something wrong within the relationship, then she's not happy. Then their sex life sucks. Then there's this and there's that. When really it's like, no, most of the time, Dr. Wednesday Martin did a lot of research on this. Most of the time when she did her studies, she would talk to women and they would say, no, I'm very happy in my relationship. Actually, I love my partner and I want him to be my life partner, but I still have this sexual desire for somebody else. And so that doesn't mean there's anything wrong necessarily within the relationship. It's just realizing that we are sexual beings and that we have these urges and desires, and it can be fun and it can strengthen the relationship. People usually go to, there's something wrong with it, when really for us, all it does is strengthen. And I say this all the time. I am not necessarily a proponent for open or poly or anything, because I think everybody should be able to choose what type of relationship they want.
Absolutely.
I don't want anyone to try open or poly just because I'm doing it. You have to be like curious about it. Yeah, because it takes a lot of work and it's going to bring up all of your shadows. And the number one thing is, okay, if you're curious about it, step one. Step two, you have to make a commitment to yourself to look at all of your shadows. And if you don't want to make that commitment to yourself, then you cannot be in an open relationship.
Hell yeah.
True.
Mic drop.
As don't drop the mic, babe. We're still not done. So I have a question and then a lead in. We ask everybody 5 questions when we finish this. This has been amazing, and
wow, it was so fast.
I know, right? I know. We can, well, first of all, probably not the last time we'll have this conversation. No. And I love you doing a workshop or something event with Dr. Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm doing a workshop with Aubrey Marcus, my fiance, and Dr. Wednesday Martin here in Austin, Texas on February 12th and February 13th. And the first night is kind of a workshop. We're talking about consensual non-monogamy. Dr. Wednesday Martin is going to be presenting brand new research on female sexuality and human sexuality. And it's open to couples and individuals. And we'll have hookah and full bar. And it's going to be an awesome event. And it's at a really exclusive club called Pershing here in Austin. And so you can find those. The tickets are still available, but they're selling out quick. And it's aubreymarcus.com/Feb12.
Okay, cool. Sophie will be there. So we'll put a link. I think we can get this out. If we get this out beforehand, we'll put a link to it. If not, and you guys have follow-up materials, we'll put link to whatever is present so people can check that out. Awesome. One thing that I was wondering as we're talking about this before we get to the questions, within these confines, I find a lot of people, like, we have our guardrails, we have set up our rules of engagement. What are some of the rules that you guys have set in place to allow the two of you to feel safe as you move forward in this?
Yeah.
So, we first started off this journey and we had so many rules. We had, you couldn't see them on Wednesday, or they couldn't text you after a certain time, or it was just all of these crazy rules, because you want the freedom, but you want to control the freedom.
Sure.
And really you're working against yourself, and that only leads to disappointment and an expectation hangover that just doesn't work out well.
Yeah.
So we've actually released and relaxed a lot of our boundaries and rules over the years, and found that it allows us to take the pressure off and feel a bit more relaxed within it. But boundaries can create freedom. So one of them for us right now, which is a big one, is that if you can't fully be with me when we're together, then we need to really talk about that and reevaluate the relationship. Because if you're constantly thinking about somebody else or constantly wanting to be somewhere else, then there's some sort of disconnect within our relationship.
Yeah.
Another thing is safe sex. People talk to me about this all the time, and they say, within an open relationship, how do you deal with STDs? It's like, well, how do you deal with STDs as a single person or in a monogamous relationship? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
For us, I'm actually, if I'm being completely honest, I am safer now in this relationship than I've ever been in my entire life.
Because you love your partner and you love yourself, and you're more respectful to all of it. Like, if anything, you're more careful and more aware, and you're communicating about things. You're not just sloppily dating people and going out and having one night stands all the time, and or whatever it is as a single person. I don't even know, because it's been so long, but I feel like there's more intention in this, is what you're saying. There's more intention.
Mm-hmm. And you have other people to think about other than yourself.
Yeah.
If I were to contract something, then I give something to Aubrey, and Aubrey gives it to his lover, and it goes on and on. So for us, safe sex, you either use a condom or you have to get tested and you show papers.
Yeah.
And those are the two that are very concrete and unwavering there.
Yeah. I love that you talked about this, because I think, again, right, people hear these conversations, and some people, not a lot of people, but some people will think it's like an excuse to do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
That's what they think it is. Whereas in reality, in my opinion, this is much more of taking a real responsibility for your actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that people say to us a lot is, this is just an excuse to fuck anything, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, it is way more challenging than just fucking anything that wants. We have to have conversations about it. We have to bring up every uncomfortable emotion that we possibly feel. We have to bring up these conversations with potential lovers and have our potential lovers talk to our current lovers, and everyone has to be tested. And so it becomes this real journey of transparency and truth and clarity between everybody, instead of just going out to a bar and hooking up with somebody, which would be real easy when you're in a single or a
pretend monogamous relationship,
non-monogamous relationship.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man. I love this. Thank you so much. Again, I hope this is the last time we talk about this, because we know we're open about it because it needs to be spoken of, but not enough people are having this conversation. Not enough people that have visibility, at least, are having this conversation. So thank you so much. And if you don't mind, we're going to get to our 5 questions.
Yeah, I'd love that.
All right. So question number 1 is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received. I would say for me, it's to be, and it sounds so cliche, but it's to be completely comfortable within your own skin. And I don't think you actually understand what that means until you practice it. And that means expressing your truest desires, expressing and using your voice and living your truth regardless of what other people's truth is. Because that's also so beautiful. It's magnetic when you meet somebody who is living in their truth and feels so comfortable in their skin, regardless of what they do, regardless of what they look like. There's just like this energy about them that is beautiful.
100%. I think so many people, again, like we talked about in the context of relationships, where so many people live a life because they believe other people think they need to live that way. From the clothes they wear to the car they drive, but to the opinions they express. And, how are you doing? I'm doing great, when they're actually really, really suffering, but they don't feel like they can admit that. Opening that up to everybody really makes a huge difference. Do you remember where you really feel like you caught that advice at first?
Within this open relationship, and probably with being so open and about the conversation, because Aubrey and I kind of put ourselves on the front lines of it, and so we are going to take arrows, and that's when you say, okay, no, I understand that we're going to take these arrows, but we're doing it not only for ourselves, but we're doing it for so many other people too who don't have the outlet or the community, or there's just fear surrounding it.
Yeah.
And so I think just standing up against that and being like, no, this is who I am. And it's okay if you don't get it. It's not meant, my journey is not meant for you. It's mine.
I'm not recruiting you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just expressing myself, and like the fact that there will be so much pain for you around me expressing myself, you got to look inside yourself and figure out why that's happening.
No doubt.
I love that. Okay. What is your proudest moment to date?
That I feel like happened recently. So I've always had I have 2 probably. I've always had an extreme fear of singing. And I don't know. It comes from, I used to sing all the time when I was younger. My grandfather went to Juilliard. It was like in the family. But at one point, somebody told me that I couldn't sing. And Aubrey loves for me to sing and really wants me to express. And this is exactly what I was just talking about, right? Like fully expressing who you are and not worrying about it. And so as of recently, just a couple of nights ago, we went together. He's in the room. He's looking at me. We went together and I sang karaoke, and that it was
nice.
Like I was sweating. My palms are sweating, and I'm like really physically terrified to do this. And
did you have the same thing around public speaking, or no, just singing?
No, just singing and dancing. I will get out there and dance like crazy, and I don't care what anybody thinks. But for some reason, when it comes to like using my voice and the vulnerability of using my voice was so challenging for me. And so being able to get on this little baby stage in Austin, Texas with like 30 people out there was awesome. And it was just being able to conquer that fear and the feeling that comes after that. You feel almost invincible.
Yeah. Well, good job, Aubrey, for allowing her, or maybe even pushing her to break through fears.
For sure.
Pushing, like literally pushing you on stage.
Yeah.
It's so, I love you hit that point where when you do one of those things, there's been this fear inside you, or this thing you think you cannot do or not allowed to do or shouldn't do. The moment you do it, it actually releases far more than just that singular fear, because what it allows your brain to do immediately is understand that there are things I think I can't do that I absolutely can and will make me feel good. So I think that's a huge lesson for a lot of people.
Yeah, it unlocks something inside of you, and it's able to create more space for for new energy and new experiences. And oh God, I just love it. It's one of my favorite things.
That's
Best
awesome.
feeling ever.
Now you're going to be on karaoke stages all the time.
Maybe. She's created a monster now. I did take my first guitar lesson yesterday.
There you go.
Oh, I bet your fingers hurt.
They do, actually. Even like in the hot shower, I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Calluses on your fingers. That's what you get from guitar playing.
What has been your hardest moment?
I would say my hardest moment, once again, you know, I always bring it back to the open relationship because it is something that constantly brings up your scariest traumas. And so there's been multiple hard, challenging moments throughout that because it brings up all of my trauma that I wasn't even aware of. And there was a moment to where I realized that something had happened in my past that was dictating how I was responding to people and how I was responding to myself. And that was really challenging for me because it made me think, holy shit, this thing happened to me when I was so young, 4 years old. And it made me act a certain way for 25 years. And it felt like I was like, who am I even? You know, I felt frustrated and scared and sad. And like, who was living my life for the past 25 years?
Do you remember the whole event?
It was an event. Yeah, there was a sexual abuse that happened. And it came up to me in a ceremony that I did. And that was just like, at first I was like, okay, this is great. This is good to know. And I can overcome it. But then you're like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Like this has controlled every relationship, every thought, every emotion, armored me up, pushed people away, broke hearts, hurt other people because of this moment in time.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, we're talking about open relationships and relationships in general right here and now, but it's all related. Like, even if you're not in a relationship and maybe you're going through like a really tough time with eating, maybe you have an eating disorder, or maybe you're struggling with addiction, like whatever it is on your journey, like for me, it just like moves on to the next thing. So like it was eating disorders in my 20s and disordered like body dysmorphic and all of that. And then it was relationships for the last decade, and whatever it is, whatever journey you're on, I think the point is just like, you're gonna have to deal with the shit. You're gonna have to sit in the shit. It's ugly. It smells bad. You're not happy. You're not proud. You're embarrassed. You want to run away and leave the relationship, leave the this, leave the that, go to rehab. Like whatever the quick fix is, you can't. It doesn't matter what it is. You have to face the stuff. And I'm so grateful that my relationship has taught me so many lessons. I'm so grateful that really hard friendships have done that. And I'm so grateful that, like, you know, an abusive relationship in high school, that then I didn't deal with any of it, but now I am. And wow, amazing. I'm so grateful that I have the experience and the ability to even go there and to have a healing support system, which is probably the key here, from ceremonies to recreational drugs, which become, for me, like the most healing thing in the world, to, you know, expanding your mind far beyond your imagination can even stretch, to new experiences that stretch your comfort zone. No matter what it is, continuing to stretch and get scared and let those darkness and those like shadows come up, because that's the only way that you're going to grow, the only way you're going to expand and become the next best version of who you are.
Yeah, you look back with gratitude on the challenging experiences for the person it made you, and for, you guys, they're kissing. It's okay. And you just like look back for who it made you and the lessons that you were able to take from it, because otherwise you would have never been able to look at that. And for me, and something that I, you know, work with my couples and clients with, is when there are those uncomfortable emotions, using that uncomfortable situation or emotion as a guiding star.
Yeah, that's the gate. Don't run away from that thing. That is the gate. That's showing you a place you got to go and explore.
Right.
Run away from it. We're going to find ourselves back here in 5 years, in 3 months, in 10 years, whatever, exploring that exact same door. Just open it.
Yep, exactly. You have the key. It's right there. It's literally giving you a map on how to navigate where you're going.
For all the pain that you're experiencing now, having realized this experience when you were 4, if you don't do the work now, it's going to keep affecting every future relationship you have.
No doubt, 100%. And that goes for relationships in general. If there's something that constantly comes up in a relationship for you, you're dating the same people or you're responding the same way, it's time to look at that. Use that as a guiding star, because that will be the same thing that will come up in another relationship, just with a different face.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. You do a lot of work on yourself. You show up for yourself. What are some of the self-care rituals that you've put in place in your life to allow the best version of you at any given moment to show up?
Fitness for me is one of the big things. Being able to work out or do martial arts or yoga. I used to hate yoga. It was the worst thing ever, I thought. Now I love it. And it was just because I tried it and I practiced it. And, reading, I love constantly learning. And it's like you said, going from I can't do something to how can I learn to do that? That's a mindset that I love to have. Even if you can't master it, just how can I learn to do it? How can I learn to figure it out just a little bit better?
Totally.
I've also done not tons, but multiple plant medicine ceremonies that have been a beautiful yet challenging, quote unquote, self-care type of journey.
These are like ayahuasca ceremonies?
Yeah, ayahuasca and iboga and wachuma.
Okay. Great. The recreational drug Sophie was talking about earlier was MDMA, which has played a huge part in her recovery from trauma, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the same for me. And I am very excited and cannot wait for MDMA to be legalized in 2021.
I know it's are we working on that right now? I know. I mean, it's funny. I know researchers at UCLA who've been researching it for a decade, and it's being used in veterans to overcome trauma. I mean, it's starting to see the light again, finally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're in phase 3 clinical trials for the FDA, and the FDA said that it's a groundbreaking therapy. Yeah. It's on track to become legalized in a few years for treatment with therapists that are facilitating the treatment.
Absolutely, so cool. Okay, obviously you found something that. A purpose and a passion. Our last question, this podcast is called Ignited. And we want to know from each of our guests, what gets you ignited? What gets you going? What drives you?
As of recently, I feel like I've lived multiple lives in one life. I went from, competing in wake surfing and wakeboarding to being Miss United States, into fighting. And then I had my dream job at that point, my dream job was to do sports commentary for kickboxing. And that was amazing. But really what gets me fired up, and throughout that time, I found out my passion is helping other people. And I'm here to inspire people and to help them along their path. And so that's why I decided to leave the kickboxing world and be able to be a confidant and help couples who want to better their relationship and create the best relationship they possibly can, regardless of what everyone else says. And so when I'm doing my client calls or when I'm doing podcasts like this and I'm spreading the message of just overall love and well-being and confidence within yourself and confidence within your relationship, that is what I get so excited. I get so fired up, because for me, it's not so much, it doesn't feel like work. I get off calls like this, or I get off calls with my clients and I'm like fired up for the day, and it gives me fuel. So they help me as much as I get to help them.
I love it. When we talk to people here who are helpers, once you click into that, and you get those, I'm sure you guys get these messages too, those Instagram messages or Facebook messages or emails that say, we listened to something you said and it completely transformed our relationship. We're going to stay married, or we're going to get married, or whatever the thing is. It can fuel me for months, just one of those messages, and you keep getting them in, and to know that you can create impact through the pain. I mean, look, we've had to go through struggles to get to this place, but to know that pain can feed other people and that message can help people make their lives better is everything.
Yeah, it's not just for you. You're doing it for a bigger purpose and a bigger cause, and people are counting on you. And it's allowing people to expand their minds, their hearts, and their lives. And so the pain is far less great than the positivity that we can bring to the world just for being able to live and figure that out.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that to us and our listeners here today. Thanks for all the work you're doing. We'll have links to all your stuff. Keep up the amazing work. If we can show up to one of these workshops, we will. And we'll love to stay connected.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We will see you next week. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.